Yes, I've been looking forward to this. Welcome to Market Madness, the podcast from Give Me Sport, where every day is like deadline day. And we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and X. That's right. Market Madness is the ultimate football podcast for fans who want to go beyond the headlines and into the stories that shape the transfer market. Each episode will feature high-profile guests, breaking news, features, games, and challenges. All you got to do is search at Gimme Sport across social media and feel free to comment. We'll try to read them out, so please get them in, man. And you can also listen back to the show later on your podcast app of your choice. Links can be found in the show notes. For more info on any of the stories discussed today, head over to Gimme Sports website. If you didn't know, my name is Mr. Joel Beya, and I'm joined by the main man as well, Ben Jacobs, and we're back for episode 9. So unfortunately, this week, Olivia Buzaglo can't make it. We love Liv, so she will be back. Do not panic. But we will be hearing from her later on in the show. Hopefully, this means we don't have to talk about Chelsea too much today. You agree on that, don't you,
Ben? Hey, I'm happy to talk about any club, completely neutral. I'm Switzerland.
Yeah, Switzerland. But you know what, Ben? Look, I love the intro, but there is some breaking news that's come up really quickly. So I think we've got to go to it straight away. What you got for us?
Not just breaking news, Joel, major breaking news, or should I say heart-breaking news for many. Joel Beya is off the market. Sources say that an engagement proposal took place, rings have been exchanged, and Beya, down on one knee, has signed a life contract. Congratulations on your engagement, Joel Beya.
Give Me Sport, you guys have really surprised me. Thank you so much for that. That's really lovely. And I honestly didn't see that one coming. What?
Tell us the engagement story.
I'll make it quick. Yeah, basically, Alex Iwobi and his manager own a really nice place in Kensington, Chelsea called Tea House. And I went to them and I said, look, my mate Emmanuel, I said, listen, I really like this place. You've got lovely views. Can I please come and propose here? He said, of course. Just got to promote it. Anyway, so I get her down there. He thought that we were going to go for dinner with Saka and his fiance and his girlfriend and other people. So she had picked all the dresses, etc. We get to the place and she's like, "Oh, we're the first ones here." Then I had a piano guy playing and I had the cameras pop up and videos. And next thing you know, I got down on my shaky knee and said, "Will you marry me?" And fortunately, she said yes.
Amazing. I just love the flex as well of Iwobi, Saka. Your whole proposal was Arsenal themed.
Well, kind of, yeah. I mean, I was just trying to get her out of the house, if I'm honest with you. So,
was she disappointed Saka didn't show, though?
She did ask afterwards. She goes, "Are they not coming this week?" No, it's just us. And she went, "Oh," and then she went, "This will do." Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, listen, we all at Gimme Sport, and I'm sure many people that are watching and listening as well, wish you huge happiness and success. Big congratulations on your engagement.
You got me, man. You really did. But listen, I have to carry on. You got me flustered here. Thank you very much, team. I really appreciate it. But coming up today, football writer and broadcaster, Mr. Henry Winter, will be here live on the show. I'm a massive, massive fan of him, by the way, man. I have so much respect for him. So I think that's a huge guest we can't just brush over. We'll be talking about our favorite goal celebrations and asking you, the viewers, to get involved. We previewed the up-and-coming Carabao Cup final with CBS Sports correspondent, former USA national team player and Newcastle fan, Jimmy Conrad. And we'll look at Manchester United's new stadium plans. Plus, as usual, Ben will be providing us with the latest breaking news. He's already done one so far. But anyway, everybody watching, let's get into it. This is Market Madness from Gimme Sport. All right, cool. So we're into it now. Ben, before we start, we have to do what we usually do, man. It is time for the challenge question. I'm being told that we have some very important breaking news that we're going to get. So is there more breaking news or is it later on?
There will be more breaking news. I think we'll bring in Henry first, but I do have something else up my sleeve. It's not engagement related this time.
Oh, okay.
But hit me with the question.
Oh, no, that's absolutely fine. So the question is, we'd like Ben to find out the answer to this. how likely is Diogo Jota to leave Liverpool this summer? If so, would Premier League clubs be interested?
Yeah, it's a good question. I will get to you with an answer between now and the end of the show.
Awesome stuff. Okay, so Ben, thoughts on Arsenal tonight? What are we doing? Do we play the kids?
Yeah, I think it's rotation for Arsenal. I know we're going to speak more about transfer business, and I've got a line coming on Andrea Berta as well, but you're 7-1 up, right? So it has to be rotation because Chelsea becomes the bigger game.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to completely play all the kids and then you lose 4-0 because that then defeats the object, But at the same time, I think it's definitely, a good chance for some of the boys on the cusp of breaking into the first team. Give him an opportunity, man. Give him a run around. The likes of Sterling, get his fitness up. He needs the confidence. He needs the games. So yeah, let's go. But you know what I want to do? I actually think it's time to bring in Mr. Henry Winter. Do you reckon that's a good idea, Ben?
Absolutely. Box office guest, best in the business.
Honestly,
let's find out his thoughts on all things, really. Thomas Tuchel's got an England squad. Manchester United have got a new stadium. Marcus Rashford's doing well at Aston Villa. We could speak to Henry for hours, but it's certainly going to be great to hear his thoughts.
I think I've got to give you a round of applause, Mr. Winter. You are a game changer. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling even more buoyed by your fantastic news, Joel. I mean, I think it's honestly so many congratulations. Hi, Ben, as well. I mean, the last time I saw such a high-profile public show of affection and a marriage proposal in public was at Villa Park, and an Aston Villa fan proposed. He slightly naively did it in front of the away fans, who all chanted, "You don't know what you're doing." But I think they're probably on a long honeymoon European tour at the moment. But honestly, Joel, many congratulations, and you certainly did it in style.
Oh, thank you so much. It means a lot coming from you guys. Thank you. But I was going to ask you, can you tell us, please, about the Winter View, your new daily podcast?
Well, I just look at how brilliantly you guys do things. I know you're even bigger than a podcast. You're taking over the world. I just think that privileged in this job to go to interesting places, meet interesting people. So this week I've been at the pro license course, helping with the media training for. I mean, who's been on it? Lee Cattermole was on it. Sonia Bompasta's been on it. Chelsea. Phil Jones, who's working with Manchester United's under-18s, and these are people I sort of know anyway. But it's fantastic to see them on the next stage of their career and to be able to contribute on the media training on that. So just give a little insight into that. On Sunday, I was at Old Trafford. I joined in the Manchester United fans' protest. I got a radio program in the morning, and one of the fans came on to sort of articulate what it's doing. So look. When I started out about 400 years ago, it was all sort of ink and quills and newspapers, and now it's different platforms. It's streaming like you're successful ones, doing your proposals live on air.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll live stream the wedding now. That's the next step, Joel. Market Madness. Don't know when you've set the date, but episode 20 or so will be there for the wedding. But Henry, to sort of follow on from that, any journalist has to adapt, and I'm wondering how much you're enjoying this multi-platform element of being able to put your work in familiar places, but also use your own channels. And as you've alluded to, have 3, 4, 5 different mediums for your work, all kind of running concurrently.
Yeah, I've always tried to do that. I've always written books. I've written about sort of 10, 12 books. I just finished one with Duncan Ferguson, and I've got another one that I'm working on at the moment. I mean, I love words. And look, what we do is just put out messages, whether it's in 50 words on X, whether it's in 120,000 words on a book, whether it's a match report, whether it's programs like this, whether it's radio, whatever. It's essentially the same issues and the same discipline. And I mean, we're very fortunate, Ben, Joel, in that our sort of careers, I know I'm slightly older, well, a lot older than you, that our careers have coincided with this incredible surf of interest in football, the confluence of new platforms, the hunger for football. I mean, I started out in the late 80s writing about headers and volleys, and then it became about racism, it came about gay rights, it became about child food poverty. I've done a few pieces with Marcus Rashford down the years. So I find that fascinating, and that, I guess, keeps me young in a way. And I love this generation. I was talking to a couple of players the other day, and I love this new generation of footballers who are conscientious, who do see themselves as football, but they are activist athletes as well, and they will use mainstream media, I guess in commas, like me during my newspaper career, to get their message out. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I'm very proud of this generation. I obviously write a lot on England, but you talk to the England players that you mentioned, Bukayo Saka. He's one of the most impressive people that you can meet, let alone one of the most impressive footballers. I thought he was a remarkable role model. The way, I mean, we're talking about Saka, and it could be the other players, but particularly Bukayo Saka after what happened with the racist abuse in the Euro final. He went, and I think he was on the bench for the first game of the following season for Arsenal at Brentford, and the support that he got from the Brentford fans and obviously the Arsenal fans was very heartwarming. But then Bukayo Saka's strength of character, basically to give two fingers to the abusers and show that he will not be cowed by them. I've just found that, I don't know Bukayo particularly well, but I just find that particularly impressive. And also it's good to know generally, societally, that they're really good people in this country. And I do think some of the best leaders and role models in this country are actually can be found in dressing rooms.
So let's delve into a couple of topics, some of which you've mentioned already, Henry, and I'm sure we'll hear more on the podcast. We'll come on to Thomas Tuchel and his first England squad in a moment, but let's begin with Manchester United, a sort of intriguing 48 hours where first Jim Ratcliffe spoke to the media, then Manchester United unveiled plans for a new 100,000-seater stadium. What have you made of both Ratcliffe's interview and Manchester United's new stadium plans?
I mean, with everything, I always look for the truth, and on the pitch, I think the football sort of dictates everything. And I thought the second half performance by Manchester United showed a bit of spirit, showed a bit of camaraderie, showed a bit of hope with the younger players coming in. Aiden Haven obviously stepped on, so came from Arsenal. I think, you know, Ruben Amorim, I think that Ratcliffe spoke about him and the sort of how encouraged he was by the performance, and they seemed a little bit more familiar with the 3-4-2-1 system. So I think that sort of defines everything. But then you look at the other issues, and as I said, I joined that sort of protest beforehand, and I've never been a fan of the Glazers. I've written critically and skeptically of them since they came in 2005, because the game belongs to fans. I mean, we saw that particularly during COVID, when the games without fans were just wretched, and fans have to be respected. And with ticket prices, and I know Ratcliffe addressed this in his interviews, and he basically said that season ticket prices for next season would go up, but it wouldn't be a huge increase, and you have to respect fans. And I mean, it's what I find encouraging is that football is essentially tribal between the clubs. But there is actually, you've got Spirit of Shankly working with Manchester United fans, working with Everton fans, Spirit of Shankly, obviously the Liverpool fans group. I think that's really encouraging. It almost sort of echoes the conscience in the dressing room. So, yeah, I mean, Ratcliffe was interesting. I mean, look, I'm the son of an architect. My dad designed or helped design a stadium in the United States, Candlestick Park in San Francisco. I've been brought up around sports stadium, and I'm sort of slightly biased towards it. And I like seeing magnificent buildings being built. And you look at Tottenham Hotspur's new stadium. You look at the Alliance in Bayern Munich. It's slightly older. You look at the revamped Real Madrid, and these are money spinning machines, which you then hope gets poured into transfer kitty, and particularly keeping season ticket prices down. I mean, that's always a vexed issue, but I think it's fantastic. I think people, I mean, you look at this. I mean, that's an amazing concourse, and I understand people. We really love Old Trafford, the history of the place. You go there, it's just the memories. You think of the great moments there, the Brazilian Ronaldo being applauded, that Cristiano Ronaldo's games, going back to Bobby Charlton's era and all that. It's a haven of memories and should be cherished like that. But football has to move on. You can't have fans standing there with a roof leaking on them. It's cramped. It needs to move on. So I think the design by Norman Foster, who's just the world's #1 architect. I don't think some of the critics actually understand the type of quality of stadium that they are getting. This is not just a stadium for Manchester United. This is a stadium for Manchester, for the Northwest, for England. This will be the most stunning stadium in the country. So look, I've got many criticisms of Jim Ratcliffe. I think he handled the redundancies in a fairly callous way, because you're not simply getting rid of someone's job or their livelihood, you're also getting rid of someone's passion for the club. So that, there are other issues there. The recruitment clearly has been bad. They've overpaid on players, but I think the stadium will generate money, and it is going to be iconic.
That is incredible stuff, and you're right. It has been, different opinions online, shall I say. But I want to move it on to England, please, Mr. Winter. Now, obviously, we know that Mr. Thomas Tuchel will be taking charge really soon. I mean, with the World Cup qualifiers, England play their first game on Friday, the 21st of March at Wembley against Albania. Do you have the latest on the squad, and what did you make of Thomas Tuchel's actual appointment?
Well, I'm a admirer of his. I was there when Chelsea won the Champions League final, and I just thought the way he set them up, the way he got good performances out of Reece James and Ben Chilwell, I mean, just all over. I just think he's a good coach. You see him here with Mark Bullingham and Andy Walker either side of him, FA chief exec and Andy's press officer. I was there at that press conference, and I think Ben was too, and I thought he handled it very well. I think that the interest of the English media isn't simply about headers and volleys and how we get Germans to teach us how to take penalties properly. It's also, there's huge interest in him as an individual. I think that's going to be one of the issues about whether he enjoys or tolerates the slightly intrusive nature of parts of the English media. So I think he's good. I mean, look, Gareth Southgate started something very special. He changed the culture around the England team, which was in a mess in Nice in 2016. Sam Allardyce came in, went out very quickly, hardly touched the sides. And Southgate just changed the culture. He took the fear out of the shirt. He got them to take penalties. They won 3 out of 4 of the shootouts. I mean, I've covered 10 out of England's 11 shootouts, and they can almost be written in advance. Southgate changed that. So there's hope, and you look at this squad and this quality of England's squad. Ben, Joel, you know these players. You know the quality in there. You mentioned Bukayo Saka. Look at Jude Bellingham. Jude Bellingham is genuinely world class. I mean, he's playing for Real Madrid, and he's a star at Real Madrid. You go to a game there, and the fans are just going crazy about him. England have got some fabulous players. They've got strength in depth. How many number 10s have we got at the moment? Gibbs White. Cole Palmer's not in great form, but you'd have him starting. We haven't even mentioned Maddison and Grealish who can play there well. Phil Foden, who was Footballer of the Year a couple of years ago. The strength in depth that he's got to call on. So the point I'm trying to make is that England have an elite level of squad. This is the best squad I've covered, and I go back to the late 80s covering England. So you look at that quality of squad, you want a quality of manager who reflects it. A lot of these players are being coached by elite managers, whether it's Carlo Ancelotti, whether it's Mikel Arteta, whether it's Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp before, now Arne Slot, Eddie Howe. So they deserve a top manager. Gareth Southgate started something, but he didn't have that tactical nous just to get England over the line, whereas Thomas Tuchel has shown he can.
Now, what I want is the inside information on the squad itself. For example, Ivan Toney, he scored 18 goals in Saudi this season. Will he be considered?
I think he'll probably be considered in terms of Thomas Tuchel has contacted 55 players already, and England at centre forward is an issue. But if I was looking for someone to come in to understudy Harry Kane, I think Solanke, if he's fit, I think would probably be in there. Ollie Watkins will obviously be in there. But I think you're looking at Liam Delap of Ipswich, because what we do know is that Thomas Tuchel has been talking to the under-21 staff. He was there the other day at St George's Park, and he was sort of talking to his staff and to the under-21 staff. And obviously Lee Carsley knows all about Liam Delap, and I think Liam Delap will be in there, and I think he's got a good, strong future, particularly, and this is huge respect to Ipswich Town, a club I'm very fond of, but I imagine Liam Delap will move on in the summer and he'll move to a Champions League club, and then you're looking at the Harry Kane succession.
Yeah, no, big fan of Delap. I mean, what a gem. But then you've also got Henry, players like Marcus Rashford. I mean, we've seen a new spark since he's been at Villa. You know, will he be considered? Will he be in the team? What do you know about that?
Well, he's 27. He's got a good England goal scoring record. He's an outstanding player. I mean, he needs to be starting regularly for Aston Villa, actually starting. I mean, but the thing about, I mean, Unai Emery is a fantastic coach, and it's brilliant that, look, Marcus Rashford had to get out of Manchester United for his own benefit, and clearly Ruben Amorim, tactically and financially, that they needed to move Marcus Rashford on, and he needed to move on. I know it's only on loan, but I can't see him going back there with Amorim there. So yes, I mean, it's great to see Marcus Rashford playing with a smile on his face. I mean, people were sort of questioning his fitness when he got there, but that burst of pace is there. He really can. I've never seen him do so many nutmegs. I mean, he's just, and that's the sign of a happy Marcus Rashford. He's best at coming in off the left, in a 4-3-3 formation. I think he's got a future with England, but he needs to be playing regularly for Aston Villa. I will be surprised if he's in the squad. But then you look at Thomas Tuchel. Everyone's talking about, Thomas Tuchel, he's going to blood all the young ones. But Thomas Tuchel is here for 18 months. He's got, 18, 19 matches if England get to the final at the MetLife at the World Cup. So, I can't see him blooding too many young ones. Liam Delap clearly will be considered. But I think it'll be a fairly experienced squad. And Marcus Rashford is obviously very experienced. He's at his prime, 27. He's got a good record with England, but he just needs to be playing a little bit more for Aston Villa.
We'll come back in a bit more detail, Henry, to Rashford in a moment and speak about your world exclusive with him. But just to wrap up the England chat, Ben White is a fascinating situation. He's got to get fit. So we might be talking about Ben White in England in the long run rather than necessarily in the squad announced on Thursday. But do you sense now, because Tuchel has spoken to Ben White, that maybe White has decided to reconsider and make himself available for England's selection in the long term?
At some point, Ben White has got to come out and explain why he withdrew from the squad, why he flew back from an England tournament, and explain why. And it will be difficult, and he'll have to qualify his words, whether it was anything to do with something that Steve Holland allegedly said to him at training out in Qatar. And Gareth Southgate always denied that there was an issue between Ben White and his number 2, Steve Holland. So I think that needs to be addressed. I think it also needs to be addressed, the fact that everyone in this country dreams of pulling on the England shirt, and he rejected that. So I'm not a huge fan of him coming back in at the first opportunity. I think he's got to show maybe a little bit more contrition, explanation. Look, he's a good player, but I mean, he's not an elite right back. I know Arsenal definitely miss him. I know he can play as a right-sided centre-half. And he does give you that option. And Arsenal look so much better when they've got that magical triangle of Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard, and Ben White sort of linking with them and occasionally overlapping. I get that. But, I mean, look, it may depend on what happens with Trent Alexander-Arnold, because that looked painful, whether it was ankle, whether it was knee that flexed last night in the game against PSG. I mean, we haven't had an update from Liverpool on that, but, he looked pretty downcast and in pain. So that obviously is an issue for England at right back. I would start him at every game. Kyle Walker is 34 on loan at Milan. Kyle Walker will always back himself to play and do well. Kieran Trippier, I think that the clock is running on him. I think he's already actually retired internationally. Livramento could step in there. I mean, England do have options, but I think if he does get called in, it will be because of absentees or injuries or players aging, with Ben White stepping in. I do still think he needs to give the fans an explanation about why he turned down the chance to represent his country.
So then coming back, Henry, to Marcus Rashford, everybody all around the world ran your excellent interview where Rashford told you he wanted a new challenge. Subsequently, he goes on loan to Aston Villa with a 40 million option to buy. And we've all seen those incredible quotes. And we know that you're one of the world's best journalists at interviewing. I'm interested in how that type of story comes about. As in, do you sense from sources the player might have something to say and get yourself in the right place at the right time? Do you pre-line up that type of story, knowing that he'll speak to you? Do you go down opportunistically? At what point did you feel Rashford might be willing to speak? And did you have to guide the line out of him using your journalistic skills? Or did you perhaps feel in advance that if you went down there, he would want to talk openly about his future?
Ben, you're very kind. You make it sound like I'm preparing an expedition up Ben Nevis or Mont Blanc or Everest. It wasn't as organised as that. I mean, as we touched on earlier, this generation of players are very conscientious. They do hospital visits. They go back to their old schools. They raise money. And I've done one or two things down the years of Marcus going back to his old school, and obviously, the amazing child food poverty campaign that he was involved in. I mean, you've spoken to him, Joel. I'm sure you have as well. I mean, Marcus has been very good at getting his message out about the need to, just look after the future generation of this country, and I think that is great. So when I actually just got a call from, I think it was his brother, just saying that Marcus was going back to his old primary school to hand out presents, and did I want to come along? And yeah, obviously I did, because I like Marcus. I wouldn't say I know him particularly well, but I'm impressed with him as an individual, as well as obviously a very talented footballer. So I just went along, and it was all very relaxed. I mean, we just sort of had a chat, and he was leaving at the end. I mean, it's fair play to him. He handed out 400 individual presents. I mean, I think the only person who actually worked harder that day was one of the people who works with Marcus, who had to wrap up all these presents for these kids. And you know what? Just a little thing. Just one of the teachers came up to me halfway through, sort of Marcus were chatting to these kids who came in form by form, and he was handing them presents. And one of the teachers said, and this was obviously about 2 weeks before Christmas, and one of the teachers said, this is the only present some of these kids will get this Christmas. And that is kind of like heartbreaking when you hear that. So I think, fair play to Rashford. He's fed the kids of this country. He made Boris Johnson do a U-turn. Twice, I think. So I think he's a power for good. I totally understand and accept, everyone saying that he needed to do more on the pitch at Manchester United. He wasn't delivering by his high standards. But there's a good person there, and I just wanted to go along and show it. I kind of went thinking I would write something. And then we just had a chat at the end, and we're mainly talking about, it was about sort of 5-minute chat, and it was mainly just talking about, the events of the day and how much it meant to people. Oh, and one of the kids went up to him and said, "Thank you for feeding me." I mean, we're a wealthy country. We shouldn't be putting kids in that sort of situation. We should be embarrassed. So I think it's fantastic that Marcus Rashford sort of has addressed that. So anyway, we were just sort of chatting about it. It had been the Manchester City, it had been the derby at the weekend. I said, "Oh, you must be frustrated not to play." And it was just kind of like football chat. And then, look, it was all agreed that it was on the record. There was no sort of subterfuge. That's not my style. And then he just sort of spoke. But I think he prefaced everything with, "Look, I want to show respect to the club." And anyway, he went off, and I thought, well, I better go and write something. And I deliberately put it on X because I didn't want a headline on it. And I wrote it just in a, Marcus Rashford was back at his old school, handing out presents, doing this thing, and then mentioned, the City game and the fact that he wanted to leave. But I mean, I alerted the club before I pressed send. Because that's only, I mean, Ben, Joel, you work with clubs. I mean, it's respectful for them that you don't suddenly roll a hand grenade into their front room when they're relaxing with their family, that you alert the media department, so they then can contact, whether it's Ruben Amorim, whether it was Sir Jim, they would have let the hierarchy know that this was about to land. So, and to be honest, anyone taking a step back from the emotion of the situation would have thought probably Manchester United were quite happy with the way this panned out.
So just a final one from me, and I think anyone listening that's maybe a young journalist or trying to get insight into the industry, hearing that answer will tell you about protests from one side when fans want something. Where's Rashford going? What's the club doing? And then journalism, where it's well sourced, where it's calm, where it's balanced, and where all sides are given a courtesy and a heads up. And that's ultimately what Henry's just described. And I think that's a very useful and important point. It's not just about getting the story, it's about knowing how to present the story in a fair and balanced way at the right time. And the more you do that, the more stories you get. So my final question to you, Henry, and I know Joel's got a couple as well on Arsenal and Chelsea. is about the football regulator, which has been on, off, and right now is very much on again. Do you sense this is finally going to get over the line?
Yes, it will, because Sir Keir Starmer, Joel, big Arsenal fan, he will make sure it gets over the line. I mean, actually, it was in the manifesto of both major parties. So I think there's been some strange U-turns going on by Kemi Badenoch with the Conservatives. The thing is, I'm not a natural supporter of regulators. But then you look at some of the owners in this country. You were discussing them earlier. There are good owners in this country, but there are also some that you simply can't trust. And I don't want to see any of the league games taking place abroad. I don't want to see promotion and relegation disappearing. I don't want to see a breakaway league. I want to see clubs respected and fans respected. That's not just a sort of traditionalist sort of approach. That is because the Premier League is such a special league that it must keep the sporting integrity, the sporting jeopardy, the fact there is promotion and relegation. The fact is that all games are played over here. And I think that the fans need the power of the regulator, who would have stopped the European Super League if the fans hadn't got there first, because the Premier League couldn't stop the European Super League. So, I do think the regulator is important. The regulator is coming. It will be in place within sort of 3 months. I think it needs to work with the clubs. Look, I understand the rearguard action, and I see it with a slight raised eyebrow by Karen Brady and people at the Premier League, because they're obviously, they're concerned. But actually, a regulator will keep the Premier League in one place. Plus, it will also keep or help the 72 EFL clubs, some of whom really are close to the brink. And you need that support. And you need the EFL. And this is, the Premier League clubs have to be reminded of this. You need the EFL clubs, obviously, because you can't really run the Premier League properly without promotion and relegation. But you need the drama of a Luton Town going up. You need that sort of refreshing of the narrative of the league by promotion. You also need the quality of players who stepped up. You look at some of the top players in this country. John Stones, who's nurtured at Barnsley, and then went to Everton and obviously Manchester City, and 4 or 5 titles there. Same with some of the managers who are in the elite league as well. So we absolutely need the pyramid. So the regulator comes in to protect the pyramid and get some more money out of the Premier League to help the so-called smaller clubs, but also to be the fans' friend, to protect them so owners don't mess around with club crests. They don't move grounds against the stadium against the will of the fans, and keeps the Premier League as we like it, producing like this, and is against breakaway leagues.
Apologies there. Henry, I was going to say, look, thank you very much for the questions answered so far. But as you know, as an Arsenal fan, we practically already won the Champions League. We're through to the quarterfinals by many goals. 7 scored last week, just in case you didn't know. But obviously, Arsenal-Chelsea coming up this weekend. Look, the position of both clubs has changed, with Liverpool, soaring in the league, and obviously Chelsea, going through that rough patch where it looked as if they were at one point going to challenge, and now all of a sudden, feelings have changed a little bit. What's the importance of this game still, would you say? Do you reckon it's still high up there in priority, or do you reckon it's just another thing that they're just prodding along now in the season?
Oh, I mean, it's a London derby. It's Chelsea versus Arsenal. There's not a lot of love lost. It's an important game. I mean, Arsenal will be up for it. I mean, I've rested a few players. I imagine Gunnosaurus is going to get a run out tonight. They've tried most people at number 9. I mean, you look at them. I think Enzo Maresco is. I mean, I live near Leicester, and I sort of know what he did there last season. I know that fans weren't completely heartbroken when he left in the end, but you look at what he's done, the way he's handled the politics, the way he's handled the large squad, the way he's handled some big egos. I think he's done a pretty good job at Chelsea. He still needs a centre forward. I mean, Nicholas Jackson may mature into that, but I still think if you put an elite centre forward there, which is, to be fair, you could say it about a lot of the clubs at the moment. And Mikel Arteta, I've been a supporter of him from the word go. I mean, you mentioned Raheem Sterling earlier. when Mikel Arteta left Manchester City for Arsenal, I spoke to Raheem Sterling and I said, listen, do you think he can make a manager? And he said that Mikel Arteta was fantastic one-on-one, not simply in terms of lifting an individual's spirit, those people skills, but also with the technical skills about working on little things like Raheem was slightly chewing the ball. He wasn't getting it out of his feet quickly enough for Pep's liking. And Mikel worked with him at the Etihad campus and just made him a better player. So if he can do that individually, working on them tactically, technically, and psychologically, and then clearly there's a good manager there. So look, even if Arsenal win nothing this season, I still think their direction of travel is absolutely fine. I know Arsenal fans get very emotional about losing a corner, about sort of finishing second again. But he's a good manager, and I'm just an admirer of his.
What about the Chelsea project then? Do you reckon it will work in the long run?
If you look at the work that their academy does, so you rewind to the academy and you look at the players that they've developed, you look at the players from their academy who are playing so well all over the place. If you think, let's not just go out and buy, let's give some of our young players a chance. That's good for PSR. That's good for one of our own. The whole Chelsea fans have loved that. It hurt them when Conor Gallagher left. They loved that sort of John Terry, one of their own sort of developed in the team. They've got one or two, but they need more. There's a lot of they make so much talent. So don't just sell it, keep it and nurture it. Don't just simply go out and spend £100 million on players. Some of them are very good. I kind of understand the longevity of the contracts, particularly if you can do that and have more sensible wages in the early years of the contracts. So, yeah, look, it's a bit of a basket case. I think the owner says some slightly strange things at times, and it's another reason why I want a regulator in to keep an eye on Todd Bowling. But yeah, it's I think they've been all right. But look, it's been a strange season, in terms of the quality. It's almost been the season of coaches, the coaches who are overachieving, like Nuno Espirito Santo, like Andoni Iraola. You could argue that Enzo Maresca, given the cards that he was played, the complications there, he's actually done pretty well. So, yeah, I mean, they're not going to get rid of him in the summer.
Yeah, strange. I definitely wouldn't have said that Liverpool deserve to be 15 points ahead at this stage as well. But there you go. That's just me speaking. I want to say thank you very much, Henry, for joining us. You've been absolutely fantastic. And you can follow Henry on X at Henry Winter, and also search for his new podcast, The Winter View, on all podcast platforms. This is Market Madness from Give Me Sport. What a guy. What a
great interview. Great podcast name as well. Thanks to Henry for joining us.
Yeah, no, really is a dream come true for me, believe it or not. Now, also when I speak to you as well, by the way, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm just a big Henry fan. But yeah, you know what? I do want to talk about Arsenal a little bit more, Ben. I know that you might have some information for me, but hang on a minute. Am I reading correct? Look, it looks like the sporting director has been announced as Andrea Berta. Okay, so 53-year-old Italian, come from Atletico Madrid. Can you please tell us more about him? Because obviously since Edu left, there's been an internal help from Jason Ato, but now is the time for Andrea. Please tell us more about him.
Yeah, Andrea Berta, I can tell you, has signed his contract as Arsenal's new sporting director. And this is a big appointment for your very own Gunners. And the reason for that is because Berta's got an outstanding record of recruitment. For example, in the last window, the likes of Julian Alvarez and Conor Gallagher, both joining Atleti. Rodri was another one of his signings too. Luis Suarez, Antoine Griezmann. But at Atletico Madrid, he was very sustainable and fit within Atleti's model, including thinking about being financially savvy as well as just finding great footballers. And that involved, for example, buying Griezmann, selling Griezmann, and then having him return to Atleti as well and making some money in the process. So this is why Arsenal believe Andrea Berta is the right man for the job. Jason Ato, as you say, was the interim sporting director, highly valued. He was on a 5-man shortlist, but Berta has got the job, and Berta has now signed. It's official, and he'll be in place for the summer. And I think key to this was not only the Arsenal hierarchy, but Mikel Arteta, because the way that Edu worked alongside Arteta was a hallmark of how Arsenal operated, where Arteta would be hands-on, he would be involved in all of the pitches, he would have constant communication. And that might sound normal, but at many clubs, the manager doesn't want that much to do with the outside of windows work. They get dragged into meetings, they get told about data, they get shown videos. And some of the managers like Graham Potter, for example, have got recruitment experts like Kyle McCauley that sit between the manager and the sporting team to make sure that effectively the manager is more of a head coach. With Arteta, he wants to be able to be hands-on, to call and speak to players, to have some kind of say without veto. And that's what really worked well between Arteta and Edu. And Arsenal feel that Arteta has given the approval for Berta, and they're going to develop a very fruitful relationship together. And we'll speak more about that a little bit later, because I'll hopefully have some Arsenal news for you soon about some of the targets that they're looking for. But Andrea Berta has signed his contract now as Arsenal's new sporting director.
Well, you know what? I'm looking forward to this new tenure, and yeah, I do wish him the best, and hopefully as well we can carry on the little Arsenal chat soon. But you know what? There is breaking news that's just come through. Ben, can you please let us know what you've got?
Yeah, I've been sitting on this since the beginning of the show, waiting for sources to let me reveal it. We know that Andrea Berta has signed his new Arsenal contract, but I can tell you that Arsenal are planning this summer for one of the biggest spends in the club's entire history. Now, many will want to put a number on it, but of course, Arsenal will look to do business at value. But it could be a spend of in excess of £300 million if we're looking at the market value of some of the targets available and the volume that they are looking for. And Andrea Berta, I can tell you, has already isolated some of his own targets that are different from those that were put forwards either by Edu or alternatively Jason Ato. So if we start in the number 9 position, because that's naturally the most reported, it remains the case that Arsenal have got 2 lead targets. One, Benjamin Sesko, who Arsenal believe has picked their project over Chelsea or Manchester United and will be available with a release clause this summer in the region of 70 million euros, although it's performance related, my understanding is, and it is variable. And therefore, the better Sesko does, the higher the amount goes up. And it could eventually be something even in the region of 80 million euros. But Arsenal feel PSR compliant. They've got money to spend, and finding that number 9 is the top priority. Of course, Alexander Isak is the other name. Newcastle have got a big League Cup final. We should start by saying Darren Eales, the Newcastle CEO, has said it would be crazy to sell Isak. That doesn't mean Arsenal won't try, but it's going to be a difficult deal to pull off. And there's no progress at this point. So Isak's focus, like Newcastle's, League Cup final, it's only a few days away. We should definitely respect that. But Isak and Sesko up front, both endorsed by Andrea Berta. Now in midfield, the most interesting scenario is 2 come in, because of course Jorginho could go to Flamengo. Thomas Partey has interest from Saudi Arabia. We know about Martin Zubimendi, who Arsenal are working on. They are prepared to either match or trigger the release clause, which is variable if you add the taxes. But from Zubimendi's point of view, he has to definitively say he's leaving, not just 90, 95%, but 100%. And until that happens, Arsenal will be cautious because Liverpool have been in this position before. But what I can tell you is Liverpool are not actively in the race for Zubimendi anymore. So Arsenal feel they've got a bit of a clear run. It's just about convincing the player. And that's the number 6. In addition, Andrea Berta is going to put forward Bruno Guimaraes, who has been on Arsenal's radar before. And again, Newcastle are not going to be selling Isak and Guimaraes. So there's a couple of aspects here that make it complicated. But the difference between Isak and Guimaraes is that Bruno Guimaraes has a verbal pact with Newcastle United that will allow him to leave for significantly south of the 100 million release clause that was active last summer. And in the winter window, the number was in the region of 80 million. This summer, Bruno Guimaraes could be available for 60 to 70 million to a Champions League club if Newcastle themselves also don't get Champions League football. And that is a verbal pact. So Zubimendi is very much the Edu A2 target, but Berta's going to be looking at Bruno Guimaraes. And my understanding is that Arsenal may try for both Zubimendi, Guimaraes, Isak or Shesko. And then on top of all of that, you got Joan Garcia. Arsenal will want a number 2 goalkeeper that can compete with David Raya and maybe even become the long-term number 1 over time. So the Espanyol goalkeeper's there as well, plus cover for Bukayo Saka, plus a left-sided winger with Nico Williams and Mateus Cunha, the 2 that are currently being looked at. And Berta, I'm told, really likes Cunha in particular. And Kieran Tierney expected to join Celtic, a left-back as well, in light of the fact that Zinchenko could depart too. So, Joel, what I am telling you is Arsenal are going to have a whole new spine of a team. And Andrea Berta, in his first window, is going to be spending big money at Arsenal.
And I don't want to get too excited because that sounds like it's too much for me as an Arsenal fan. Like just to try to believe, I need to keep my feet on the ground. But honestly, wow, if you're right, Ben, yeah, I will be proposing to you.
So you're going to call off the wedding?
I'll call off the. No, I'll marry you both. Can't call that one off.
Let me tell you this: if you call me up and you say Saka's coming to dinner, first of all, Saka better come up to dinner, and second of all, I cannot guarantee a yes.
This, you know what? I understand, but the possibilities are very exciting as an Arsenal fan. I mean, you know how we've been recently. We want to see the additions in the right place. I mean, of course, you know, Mikel will probably go for a customary defender. We know he loves that every season, but the attacking options are really scintillating, and hopefully, we can get them across the line.
Let me just quickly, Joe, do this with you. Turn the tables, and this will be like a speed quiz. I'm just going to give you the either ors, and you're going to tell me who you'd rather have. So Isak or Shesko should be an easy one.
Isak.
Guimaraes or Zubimendi, even though they may target both.
Zubimendi.
Let's say Cunha or Nico Williams.
Nico Williams.
Defender targets haven't yet been sort of locked in too much because Arsenal are still deciding if maybe they want a centre-back. But on the left-back side, Anthony Robinson or Milos Kerkez.
I'll probably say Robinson just because of because I haven't seen Kerkez too much. So I'll go for that.
And any dream defender, nothing to suggest yet there'll definitively be a centre-back coming in, but they're looking in case they need one. So who would you like if you could add one more centre-back?
Well, that's available or just one in general?
Just anyone. You got like Dean Hodgson, for example, that's heavily in demand. Mark Gahey could be available in the market potentially. Jared Branthwaite.
I think Branthwaite is the fees that I see for him is like I just don't understand it. I see it on a weekly basis and I go, what is going on here? I'll probably go for Gay, man. Like seeing his performances for England in the Euros, he grew into him. You can see what he's like on the ball. Not the tallest of centre backs, but the heart is completely there. I would definitely go for him if there's an option.
There we go. We've just built a whole new Arsenal team.
Yeah. Hopefully it actually happens for real. But anyway, Ben, I want to start talking about goal celebrations next. So we're going to play a little video, right, sent to us by Liv, who unfortunately can't be with us today. It means that we haven't spoken about Chelsea as much, but she has a special message. Please, let's play the video.
Hi guys, so sorry I can't be with you today. Now everyone knows hearing Joel complain about Arsenal makes my week, but unfortunately I cannot be there. I did want to ask you guys a question about goal celebrations though. Now this video of Marc Cucurella made me think about it. What we're going to do is show you the video. This is our very own Ben Jacobs last week asking Marc Cucurella about his specific penguin celebration.
Hi Mark, you've become a little bit prolific this season. Can you talk a bit about what's led to your best goal scoring output? And then can you also explain your kind of penguin celebration and if that is directly in reference to the 2 slips of the Spurs?
No, the celebration. I think a lot of people they thinking is about this, but no, it's because I saw in internet that the penguins there are choose like one partner and his family for his life, so they stay together for his life. So I want to remember in these best moments my family that are always support me in the best and in the worst moments. So there are for them this celebration. And then this season I score some goals. Hopefully I can score a lot of more. I think like the manager say, I think sometimes it's more about staying in the good position because then the ball arrives to you, and I think I can score more goals and help more the team.
I love Marc Cucurella, and this guy's been on a journey. First of all, I think it would have actually been funnier if he'd have said, yeah, it's also a reference to those 2 slips against Spurs, because penguin slips, it does make sense. And given the sort of guy Marc Cucurella is, like, he's the sort of player you absolutely love if he's on your team, but you absolutely hate if you play against it. I think the perfect example of that is when he played against England for at the Euro final. And I remember I love Marc Cucurella, especially like this last year and a half where he's actually come on and we've seen the Brighton Cucurella. But when he played for Spain, I was like, oh my God, he is so frustrating to play against when like he's on the opposing team. But I think his journey has been a difficult one. I think he got a lot of criticism, a lot of scrutiny was put under his name when he joined Chelsea. But he's done so well to come out the back of that. And now we are seeing the reason why Chelsea bought Marc Cucurella. He's the sort of player that like, he pops up everywhere. Like when I watch Chelsea, I'm like, how is Marc Cucurella the only one in the box? Or why is Marc Cucurella on the right wing? Or why is he on the left? Like, why is he playing centre mid? Like, he is one of those players that I think you can play everywhere. And at the moment, you know, I think he's undroppable, and he's got a good amount of goals as well this season. Like we saw in that video, I think hopefully he can carry that on as we get into sort of the back end of the season as well. So yeah, I really like him, and I think he'll stay at Chelsea now for a very, very long time. He is the left back, and I can't really see anyone sort of coming in and changing that. But his penguin celebration, I do really like. It was actually quite sweet, to be honest. Like his reasoning for having that celebration about only having one family, I thought that was really nice. But that got me thinking, because that is like a unique celebration, I suppose. Got me thinking about other celebrations, my favorite goal celebrations. I mean, I'm not even just saying it because it's Didier Drogba, but like that is like iconic. Like when you think of Didier Drogba, that is what you think of. I can't remember his name. Do you remember the guy that got down on all 4 knees and started like pretending to be like a lion? It sort of weirded me out when I think about it, but also that's one celebration I was like, oh my God, I will never forget that celebration. Can't remember what his name was though. You guys will have to let me know what his name is. I'm sure you'll know which one I'm talking about. And I say this, my favorite ever goal celebration is actually like not a proper celebration. It is, you guys are probably going to be like, what on earth are you talking about? You know, when you go and do a knee slide, because the knee slides are like the most satisfying like celebration if you get it right and you go sliding miles. I really like it when they go to a knee slide and their knees hit the grass and they just flap forward. I really, really like, I think you'll know what I'm talking about, going for a knee slide and then your knee just gets stuck in the ground and then you just fall over and you look really stupid. So my all-time favourite, Didier, but like I've got a lot of time for people to go for a knee slide and absolutely mess it up. But yeah, Ben and Joel, let us know what your favourite goal celebrations are. And don't pick the boring ones, although I think I've just picked a boring one as well. And also, anyone watching us live, feel free to comment with yours. Let us know your favourite goal celebrations. Have a great show, and I will see you very soon.
Oh man.
Ooh. By the way, Bafétimbi Gomis was the player
yes,
that Liv
Swansea.
mentioned.
Yes. I thought that as well. I was like, classic. I remember that. But yeah, you know what? Do you think she picked boring ones? I think they were all right, what she said, really.
I think some of the most banal celebrations become that way because everyone does them. It's like the famous Shearer celebration as well. It's not that creative, right? But everyone replicates it. The aeroplane one too. And I think some of the simpler ones are the better ones. Before I kind of tell you my top three, I have my own failed celebration I want to mention. And as a kid, I was playing at Odeby Owls, which might sound like a ridiculous team name, but they were kind of roughly connected to Leicester City's School of Excellence. And I was down on the left wing. I was playing for the under 15s, even though I was only 12 years of age, which was like quite a big deal. It was a winter day. Ball comes to the back post. Goalkeeper parries it. I'm there, 2 yards out, pass it into the net. There's a defender on the line. I score. It crosses the line quite clearly. And then I run behind the goal and I do a frog celebration. So behind the post, immediately get down on both knees and like basically start doing that all the way across the goal until I get right the way round to the other post. Then I take my shirt off. There was no like yellow card booking in those days, only to find that the linesman says the ball was cleared off the line by the defender. And to this day, I can guarantee you that ball 100% crossed the line, but I did the celebration in vain, took my shirt off in the freezing cold, and the goal didn't even stand. It reminded me of Dominic Solanke, I think it was, when he put on a mask for a goal that then went to VAR and got disallowed.
Oh, you know what? You don't want to be putting that much effort in and then all of a sudden it's disallowed. Aubameyang used to do that quite a lot as well. He used to do the Wakanda one when he was in Dortmund. But yeah, no, for me personally, if I was to say, it would have to be the classic Robbie Keane celebration. You score, you did a little front flip, and then you did a little machine gun. There you go. I know the viewers and the listeners, you can't see it, but the viewers are loving it for sure. There's an image of Robbie Keane there playing for Ireland. But yeah, you know what? Also, look, there's a celebration that has to do with fishing. Ben, I don't know if it's the same story that you've already said, but is there a video that needs to be played regarding this right about now?
Yeah, I think we might be able to show you this one. This is my number one celebration. Little Panenka penalty.
Oh,
and then check this out for a celebration. Little cast of the net, pull in, and then
classic.
The dead fish comes. So this is a very viral, if you like, Icelandic club by the name of Starnen, who do a series of quite creative celebrations. They dance. There was a giving birth celebration, I remember, but the fishing one was probably the one that went the most viral. That's my number one. Then my number two is just for pure cheekiness, and it is Martin Boyle at Hibernian, who had a penalty kick, and the goalkeeper there you see in the background, I think it was against Kilmarnock, was taking an absolute age, standing to the left of the post and drinking from his water bottle. And Boyle's just standing there waiting to take the penalty, getting really annoyed because clearly the goalkeeper's just delaying and trying to get in his head. Then he scores the penalty. So he runs straight over to that goalkeeper's water bottle, picks it up and drinks from it to say, I know what you were doing before the penalty kick was taken. So that was quite clever because it's like a reactive celebration and it's a way of sticking one to your opponent in the moment. And then my final one is very simple and everyone will say Spurs, but it was happening during his Leicester days as well. James Maddison, darts celebration. That makes my top three as well.
You know, I like that. I think that's a solid three, if I'm to be really honest with you. I mean, we also wanted to stretch this out to the wider Market Madness team. Producer Nick said that his favorite goal celebration of all time was Jimmy Bullard's away at City. He recreated the scene of manager Phil Brown giving them a telling off on the pitch at halftime. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but if you haven't, please make sure you check it out. It's definitely up there. Football operations lead at GMS, Christy, said that the classic Alan Shearer celebration is his favorite. A bit boring. Yeah, maybe. I just thought,
it's not boring. It's just classic.
It depends how you see it, you know. I call it boring, but it's iconic. It's boring but iconic in my eyes, you know. But then you also have assistant producer Christian. He's gone for Paul Gascoigne at Euro 96.
Oh, great shout.
Electric chair.
Not electric chair, dentist chair.
Dentist chair. Sorry, that's the one. Dentist chair.
Big difference.
Yeah, showing my age there. Oh man,
Yeah, it's terrifying to me that some people won't know that story. But basically, Gaza was out partying and photographed drinking as if he was in a dentist chair with booze poured into the mouth. And then when he scored that classic goal, they recreated the scene with water.
Wow. That's incredible, man. Incredible.
And Danny as well, one of our excellent reporters at Gimme Sport, says Shefki Kuchi has to be up there as well.
Is that the one where he just kind of like dives on the floor?
I think it's like a headfirst
Yeah,
dive
headfirst,
or like a belly flop.
Yeah, it's a strange one, but yeah, I've never quite understood that one, but it's definitely popular.
And by the way, Roger Miller, for a slightly older audience as well, doing the little bum wiggle by the corner flag.
Classic, international. Love that, Ben. Okay, listen, we do actually have to move it on though. Don't forget to check out Gimme Sports website for more info on any of the stories discussed today. This is Market Madness from Gimme Sport. So, if you've just joined us, then you've missed Henry Winter chatting about Manchester United, the Premier League title race, and the England squad. But don't you worry, you can watch the show back on Gimme Sports YouTube channel later, or listen on your podcast app of your choice by searching Market Madness. Okay, cool. So we're going to move it on to the topic of the Carabao Cup final this weekend. Newcastle versus Liverpool. Yesterday, Ben caught up with CBS Sports correspondent, former USA national team player and Newcastle fan, Mr. Jimmy Conrad. Please, can we play the video?
Welcome back to Market Madness. Jimmy Conrad joins us now. Away the lads is his name. And no surprise, even though he's a CBS broadcaster by day and a US men's national team player historically, that his loyalty for now lies to Newcastle United. Jimmy, how are you?
I'm great, Ben. Great to see you as always. And yes, I'm excited about this League Cup final, and I'm hopeful that we can possibly be competitive against Liverpool, who obviously have been tremendous this season under Arne Slot.
I don't even have to say it, but I will, just in case some people are watching on audio and not seeing our beautiful faces. You are a Newcastle fan. You're wearing my all-time favourite Newcastle United kit as well. So let's begin with this origin story. How did you become a Newcastle fan?
Yeah, I know it's always a curious thing for how do Americans support a specific Premier League club? And for me, back in the day, the only thing that we were seeing in the States was Manchester United highlights. We would see Eric Cantona do his thing week in and week out until he kicked a Leeds fan in the face, of course. But so I had a lot of friends who were like drawn to Manchester United because that's what we were seeing all the time. And obviously they were very good and fun to watch. But Newcastle famously beat them in the 96-97 season 5-0. And I love the black and white, and I love Kevin Keegan, and I just like, that's my squad. I wanted to be a little bit more counterculture to what was happening. And unfortunately, after I started like, that's my team, it was a steady decline for many, many years. And now, obviously, it's nice to be competitive once again under Eddie Howe. And so we got a team that I think can compete. And obviously, with the big win against West Ham, yesterday, it's nice to see us start to kind of after I think you guys call it a purple patch. We had a purple patch in the middle of December, 9 straight wins in all competitions. So it's nice to kind of get back our footing in the Premier League as well. I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic, as you can tell, but that's my origin story of supporting Newcastle. And it was at a time where Newcastle were very good. And so I'm hoping we can get back to those heights very soon.
So Newcastle now, very different to Newcastle then. And since the time of Mike Ashley under this PIF ownership, the project has really set fire. What are your expectations in the league before we come to the League Cup final for Newcastle? Can they get Champions League, bearing in mind that because of the coefficient rankings,
Right.
top 5 might be good enough?
There's a dramatic pause there, Ben, because I want to say yes with my whole heart, but I'm also a long-time suffering Newcastle fan that at times thinks maybe negative first before I get into the positive. Yeah, of course it's there, and it's as wide open as ever, right? Chelsea, maybe not the same as they've been in the past. Man United's dropped off. Tottenham, not in the conversation as well. You have other teams. You got Forest, you got Bournemouth, you have Fulham, right? That are all kind of knocking on the door as well. West Ham hanging around. We'll see if they get it a little more consistency under Graham Potter, but I want to say yes. I think Eddie Howe has done a nice job of getting the most out of the players. Health and managing suspensions. Looking at you, Anthony Gordon. There would be, if we can keep healthy. Alexander Isak is probably the most important player here, but getting Callum Wilson into the team. Can Isak and Callum Wilson coexist at the same time, or are they just a like for like replacement? That's going to be interesting to see, and I'm curious as to what the starting 11 is against Liverpool this upcoming weekend. But I want to say yes, of course. There's a chance, especially because of there's 5 spots that we can make it happen, and because some of those other teams that are above us have multiple competitions to pay attention to, that could play into our favor. And if we win the League Cup final, then you have this boost of confidence that could maybe propel you into the top 4, top 5. So yeah, that's a really long way of me saying I'm cautiously optimistic once again that we can do it. But I think there has to be, it's more hopeful. You know how sometimes, and you can say this about a player, like, I hope he has a good game, or I know he's going to have a good game. And in this moment, I am more Newcastle. I hope that they can have everything fall their way to get top 4, top 5. Whereas with certain teams, certain players, you just know they're going to figure out a way to make it happen. So I'm on the fence between hope and knowing. But yeah, I'm just hoping for the best. I don't know. It's early here where I am. Can I start drinking? Is that alcohol related?
Don't see why not.
Yeah,
Little bit of much courage as we build up to the League Cup final. Now, in that game, it's a one-off. It's a cup final. And you'd probably say, if it was at St. James's Park, that 12th man and atmosphere would really give Newcastle the edge. But there's no denying, is there, at Wembley Stadium, with a suspended Anthony Gordon, with an injured Lewis Hall, that Newcastle are very much underdogs for this League Cup final.
Well, yes, I agree with you on that. Even with those two in the team, I'd still think we'd be the underdog. I know the Newcastle supporters travel well. We got to the League Cup final 2 years ago, and I believe there were 100,000 Toon supporters in and around Wembley. So I'm excited to have that type of support once again. I think it does give a boost to the players, and I don't know why it wouldn't. Liverpool, I'm sure, will travel well, but they're kind of familiar with being in these games. Maybe it doesn't feel as special as it will for Newcastle. But yeah, we're underdogs. There's no question that we have a lot of work to do. I do think, though, that having the boost of having this 1-0 win away to West Ham, and the way that we did it, Ben, right? There's a little bit of grit there. There's a little bit of character of we're going to figure out a way to win this game. I thought was really impressive. Get the clean sheet, right? I mean, make the plays that you have to make. And obviously you get a nice run out with players without Gordon, without Hall. You get a little bit of game time under pressure to make decisions and get comfortable with how they're going to move. Now, obviously West Ham, not as decisive in a game as Liverpool. What I'm hoping is that Liverpool will suffer immensely against PSG in leg 2 of the Champions League. Maybe they'll go into extra time, and that extra day of rest and maybe being pushed will be advantageous for Newcastle. Still quite a few days until the League Cup final, so I'm sure they'll recover. But I feel like there's still a chance, and I'm very curious as to where Eddie Howe is going to line up on the left side. Joe Linton's got to be in the team. When he was out with a knee injury last month, the team just doesn't look the same without him in it. So him back into the midfield with Bruno and Tonali, I think is going to be important. Then it's just a matter of who you put out wide left. I've heard that there could be a possibility that Alexander Isak could stand out there, which would be interesting because if they roll out Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's not known for his defending, that could be an area where they could take advantage. And then you could have Callum Wilson in the 9. Or you could go with Isak up top, where he's been tremendous, of course. Maybe a little quiet in the West Ham game, but ultimately always ready for the big moment. And had a goal and an assist against Liverpool earlier in the season at St. James's Park, and didn't play a couple weeks ago against Liverpool at Anfield. So you throw him back into it, and for whatever reason, he's got Virgil van Dijk's number. So maybe you put him at the 9. And then you could have Harvey Barnes, who had an assist against West Ham, or you have Joe Willock. You could have the JoJos of Joe Linton and Joe Willock out to the left. So and then Livramento. I mean, we should talk about him, because there is, I'm trying to find the glass half full type thing here. He's a right-footed player playing on the left side, and I think he can put in a defensive shift. Now, nobody's stopping Mo Salah this year, but if you have Joe Linton maybe sliding over to help out and slow Mo Salah down, but he's a right-footed player, and Mo Salah likes to cut it on his left. So maybe there's some common sense or some logic there as to why that could work. But again, we're getting into hopeful and not knowing for sure.
Yeah, a lot of Newcastle fans were moaning to me, why are we playing on a Monday when it's the League Cup final week? But Liverpool have got a game on a Tuesday, so it's still one more day of rest for Newcastle. But as you say, they've got to move things around. Isak playing out wide would certainly be a surprise, but tactically it would make a lot of sense. Let's just talk about him in a bit more detail. It feels like every single day we wake up and we hear a link with another club. But the Newcastle CEO, Darren Eales, did an interview about a week ago saying it would be crazy to sell him. They don't have to due to PSR. And Newcastle's valuation may well be £150 million or more. Do you sense, get Champions League or not, win the League Cup or not, that Newcastle will be able to hang on to Alexander Isak?
The only thing I could see with Alexander Isak, if we don't qualify for the Champions League, if we don't win this final, I have had the opportunity to work with him before. This is many years ago for EA video game competition. Excellent FIFA player. But there's a humbleness about him that I appreciated. Very human, very down to earth. And I think that he has a loyalty to Newcastle. But if you're not in those types of competitions, and that's obviously where all the players want to compete, and to feel like they have this opportunity to do so, that'll make it really easy for him to stay. If we're not, then it gives him an out, right? He can say, hey, but I want to play in Champions League. I want to make sure I'm competing consistently for trophies. And so I don't want him to have that out. So it's very important for us to finish in the top 4, top 5 to make that happen. And even Europa League could be enough to keep him around. But his valuation, to your point, could be too high for clubs to want to swoop in and get him. Arsenal, I know we're dancing around him in January. They probably should have pulled the trigger because they have been falling without a number 9, and obviously they have their own injury concerns. But it would be really disappointing if he left. I feel like we're still in the middle of a project. I know that there's probably a piece or two that could be added to make us even stronger. Sven Botman obviously getting hurt doesn't help in the center back position. We still could strengthen some areas. I think our outside back, Lewis Hall, though, has been tremendous. Trippier is a little bit older. There's some other areas where I think we could be a little bit better, but overall, I don't think we're too far away from where we want to go. And you hope that you can pitch that to him to entice him to be committed and have the enthusiasm, right? You don't want to just stick around to stick around. You want to feel really good about what the future has in store for you. So I don't know if he's listening, but please stay, Alexander Isak. We don't want you to go.
Just finally on Newcastle, try and put into words as a fan what it will mean if Newcastle United win the League Cup final and claim their first bit of major silverware in 70 years.
I feel like I'm not the right person to speak for a Newcastle fan who lives in the city and obviously has been born with wearing the black and white. I would be ecstatic. I would be thrilled. But I could only imagine what it would mean to the people that live there and live and breathe and go to St. James's Park week in and week out, to have a piece of silverware that validates and maybe just says, hey, listen, we can stop suffering for a little while. And it's fun to have a competitive team. I've kind of danced around the investment from PIF. I'll say this, from a sporting perspective, it's nice to be competitive. To have that type of investment and where it comes from, it makes me want to take a shower sometimes when I think about it. But you know, there's that investment going on in all sports all over the place, and maybe that's me trying to validate their involvement. But and I know I've kind of tap danced around this, but that aside, just winning and being competitive and having a trophy would be really, really special. And I believe the fans there that have been thirsting for it for so long and suffering through the Mike Ashley years, which was very difficult, and being on the cusp, right? I mean, even getting to the final 2 years ago and taking out a Man United team that have demonstrated that they aren't that great. And that was, you get a set piece, Casemiro scores and Rashford scores 6 minutes later. I mean, just these fine margins. You just hope that they tip your way against a very good Liverpool team. And I actually think that we can walk into this knowing that we are the underdogs. We have nothing to lose. And I think Eddie Howe has done a very good job of having like an us versus the world mentality. And I hope he can push that button one more time to get a result here. So I kind of walk into this with no real expectations because of how good Liverpool is. But if they can do it against this Liverpool team, I just feel like it makes it even that much more special. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question directly, but I would be probably even more thrilled for the fans that go week in and week out and never seen the generation of fans that haven't seen Newcastle lift a major trophy. And I think that 70 years is a long time, Ben. So there's quite a few generations that haven't had that luxury. So I'm hopeful it'll happen this weekend.
And Jimmy, just before I let you go and put some alcohol into that mug and prepare yourself for the League Cup final, you are, of course, amongst many other things, an incredibly talented broadcaster. Always enjoy listening to you. And one of your main homes in that domain is CBS, who are doing brilliant things in the space and giving you and others a huge platform to talk about soccer and the 2026 World Cup. And one of those mediums is a podcast by the name of Call It What You Want. You, Tony Meola, and Charlie Davis as well. Give me the details and then tell me other places as well where we can hear more of this incredible insight and passion that you have for the beautiful game.
Well, you should be my publicist, Ben. That was a really nice setup there. Yeah, so Call It What You Want is a podcast. You can find it on YouTube as well. Golazo America is the name of the YouTube channel. It's part of the Golazo Network, which is a soccer-only channel here in North America. And it's been great. They have a ton of studio productions. There's Morning Footy, which you can find me on. I'm also on CBS Sports HQ. And so on this podcast. But yeah, we're really excited about being one of the destinations for fans. If you want to know more about what's happening with the World Cup and for the U.S. men's national team in perspective and any of the players in our player pool, this is the spot to go make it happen. So yeah, I appreciate that opportunity to give me some shine in our show because we put a lot of love and time into it. And then you can find me at Jimmy Conrad on the social medias. I apologize in advance for anything that you're about to see.
Jimmy, keep shining. Keep that shirt on between now and the League Cup final. Good luck and thanks for your time.
Come on, Newcastle. We got this. Let's go.
Joel, I think you're muted, my friend.
Gosh,
Rookie error.
I actually had a great segment in. I said, "Away the lads." I actually went on to say that we're all good now, right?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. I want to hear the "Away the lads" though. Redo that.
Away the lads. Hopefully I've made justice for Jimmy anyway. So, but yeah, in the interest of balance, we did speak to James Pearce from The Athletic a couple of weeks ago. Here's a little clip of the preview to match from a Liverpool perspective.
The League Cup final. From Newcastle's point of view, the narrative will be all about, can they bring in a first piece of silverware, major anyway, for the first time in 70 years? But what about for Liverpool? Because the bar's been set so high under Arne Slot that people are working on this assumption. The Premier League is wrapped up. Champions League, they're one of the favourites. And then, of course, when they went out in the FA Cup to Plymouth, there was almost a, hang on a minute, your season can very quickly unravel, as we've seen with Manchester City. So how important is it, in your opinion, that Liverpool get an early and that first piece of silverware, just in case, of course, the back half of the season doesn't go according to plan?
Yeah, it's huge. I think you're right. In the build-up to the final, the narrative will be formed around, can Newcastle end that massive long wait for silverware? Of course, Liverpool are going back to defend the trophy they won 12 months ago, but I don't think that makes it any less important to Liverpool. For Arne Slot, it's huge. His first major final as Liverpool manager. And, I think it doesn't matter whether there's bigger prizes within your grasp that are on the horizon. You always want to get that first big trophy under your belt. You think back to the Brendan Rodgers era when it looked like he was going to be the man to end that long title drought. It didn't happen in such agonizing circumstances. And he ended up not winning a thing during his Liverpool reign. So I know 12 months ago, winning the Carabao Cup didn't lead to the kind of fairy tale finale to the Klopp reign that everyone was thinking it might do at the time. But to go in the distance in the Carabao Cup wasn't the reason why Liverpool fell short during the run-in. And I think going to Wembley, winning it, having that feeling of kind of achieving something special together will only galvanise Liverpool as they kick on. And obviously the dream scenario for them is to add the Champions League and the Premier League to that Carabao Cup before the end of the campaign.
Wow. What do you reckon, Ben? I know you don't like predictions, but obviously we've had the injuries to Trent Alexander-Arnold. That's a massive talking point. Would you say that they are much weakened now, or are you happy with these deputies stepping in?
Well, I think both sides are much weakened in many ways. Newcastle will be without Lewis Hall, who's had successful surgery on a foot injury. Anthony Gordon suspended for a moment of madness, and Newcastle choosing not to appeal that. So it's going to be a strange League Cup final. I'm sure Newcastle fans will question, why did we have a Monday game with a League Cup final? Why were we put last in the Premier League order? But of course, Liverpool will say, we played on a Tuesday in the Champions League. And when we spoke to James Pearce, there was this chance of Champions League, Premier League, League Cup. Now we know they're out the Champions League. And to be honest, I expect a strong Liverpool response. And even though they went out, it was a high quality Liverpool performance last night in a game of fine margins. So I think Newcastle may face a Liverpool team, not even with a point to prove, just that back themselves as they have done all season. And that firepower of Liverpool at the front end of the field, in my opinion, even though Isak's back for Newcastle, will be the difference. And Newcastle are underdogs and Liverpool are favourites. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Arne Slot said it would be a surprise if he makes the League Cup final, whereas Ibrahima Konate, who also went off, was only down to fatigue. So the extra time, the extra day for Liverpool as well, playing compared to Newcastle, all of that perhaps gives the Magpies a little bit of good news. But I expect Liverpool to put that Champions League exit behind them and still go into this League Cup final as big favourites. And even though I would love to see, if I take off my journalistic hat, Newcastle win their first piece of major silverware in 70 years, my expectation is that Liverpool win this game.
I agree. I actually saw a post on Instagram by Curtis Jones, and it looks like he's disappointed, but he said he can't live without taking responsibility. 10 games to go, starting with the League Cup final. And I said, whoa, that actually sounds scary.
Yeah, he didn't do that much wrong, did he, really? I mean, Donnarumma made 2 good saves. The Nunez one was at a good height for the keeper and not quite in the corner. But I honestly think Jones's penalty was hit extraordinarily well, and it was just a world-class save. So for me, Liverpool will actually relish, even with a tight turnaround, having that League Cup final so soon, because you can go from despair to ecstasy so fast. And there's so much at stake for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Even if he doesn't play, he'll still get a medal, could be off to Real Madrid. Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah haven't signed yet. We're going to speak about Diogo Jota at the end of the show. So this is like a new era and a chance for Arne Slot to win the first piece of domestic silverware. But there's also a backdrop about end of era too, and whether or not some of these Liverpool players are going to get their last opportunity. Salah was in tears last night. If he goes to Saudi Arabia, that's his last game in the Champions League, you would think. Virgil van Dijk, captain of the football club, We know he's almost certainly going to be lifting the Premier League trophy, but getting that League Cup trophy in the bag early helps too. And I think back, Joel, to Jurgen Klopp, when again, everyone said quadruple, everyone said they're fighting on all fronts. Everyone said he's going to bow out on a high. And actually, in hindsight, winning that League Cup was such a special moment because it was the only trophy that Klopp left with in that final season. So to get silverware early for slots and for potentially some of these departing players is going to be really big. And that's why I expect Liverpool to continue the intensity of an excellent performance at Anfield against PSG, even though they went out, and win the game against a depleted Newcastle side who will miss Anthony Gordon and Lewis Hall. And the last thing that I would add is when I looked at a fit Trent Alexander-Arnold who likes to cut inside, I really liked Tino Livramento at left back for Newcastle, because even though he's on the wrong side, with Trippier coming in at the right and Livramento covering for Lewis Hall, it made sense to me because, as Jimmy alluded to as well, you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold versus Tino Livramento, and when he tries to come inside, Livramento's right foot is very beneficial. But if Trent Alexander-Arnold doesn't play, then that left side of Livramento not inclined to overlap because he doesn't want to be out wide on his left foot, and no Anthony Gordon, I think that gives Liverpool a big advantage.
You know what? I do have to agree. I don't see Liverpool losing this. And I know you said that, you know, it will be great for them to have a trophy under their belt. I mean, they've already got the Premier League, Ben. Honestly, we got to stop pretending. Even I've accepted it, you know. But anyway, listen, moving on. I don't want to depress myself further. It's time to finish with Ben's question challenge. So
we got a bit of breaking news, Joel, before we get into that. Catching you by surprise, I know, but that's the beauty of this show. Every day is a bit like deadline day. And I can reveal that Bournemouth owner Bill Foley is to start direct and face-to-face talks with Andoni Iraola about his future next week. Now, to an extent, this is off the backdrop of the fact that Tottenham have already made contact with the Iraola side as part of normal succession planning, just in case they don't persist with Ange Postecoglou. At this stage, we're not talking about game by game for Postecoglou. Obviously, the match against AZ this week is important, but Postecoglou is going to get until the end of the season. There'll be an end of season review. Spurs want to make it work. But of course, whenever you maybe have to make a change, you have to start that succession planning, which is what all well-run clubs do. And Tottenham have made contact with Iraola, and Bournemouth's intent is to try and reward Iraola with improved terms and keep him at the club. And whereas with Dean Hodgson or Anton Semenyo perhaps, or Milos Kerkez, if the right opportunity comes, Bournemouth will not unduly stand in these players' ways. But Bill Foley wants to keep Andoni Iraola, whether Bournemouth get Champions League or European football or not, whether Spurs come calling or not. And next week, there will be a meeting directly between Bill Foley and Andoni Iraola to discuss his goals, his aspirations, and his long-term future. And in the same way as Fabrizio Romano reported earlier that Palace are trying to tie down Glasner to a new deal, Bournemouth's intent is to keep Iraola, but he is one of the leading names on Tottenham's list of, again, to stress, succession plannings. This isn't about yet replacing Ange Postecoglou, but if they did, then Iraola will be within Tottenham's thinking. And what's kind of intriguing is Iraola, like many managers, does have a release clause. So if Tottenham wanted to trigger that and pay the full compensation, then Bournemouth would not be able to stand in Iraola's way. But of course, should he sign new terms, you might find that that release clause either gets increased or removed entirely. So it's opportune timing for Bournemouth because they want to make sure that there's that long-term commitment, if they can get it from Iraola now, before the scenario where Spurs officially come calling presents itself. And I'm told also, and can reveal, within Iraola's existing contract, there is a release clause of north of 5 million. And sources say it can rise depending on different criteria, such as, for example, Bournemouth getting a top half finish or European football, as high as 7 million. So that 5 to 7 million number is what Spurs are looking at if they move on from Postecoglou. And again, to be really clear here, because context is important, we're not talking yet about Tottenham looking actively at interviewing anyone. We're talking about Spurs wanting to back Postecoglou, but if a scenario arises where they have to look elsewhere, Iraola will be one of the leading names that they consider. And there is currently a release clause of 5 to 7 million, but Bournemouth may try and tie Iraola down to a new deal, and those talks are due to start next week.
Oh my gosh, you know what? I thought it was like an audition when they played anyway, but you know what? We'll see what happens with Ange. He's the luckiest man alive, if you ask me. But it's time to finish the show with Ben's question challenge. To remind the listeners and viewers, we asked Ben to find out how likely is Diogo Jota to leave Liverpool this summer? If so, would Premier League clubs be interested? Ben?
Yeah, they would. It's a possibility that Jota could go, although I wouldn't say it's a priority exit. And a lot will depend on Jota and whether he feels he's going to get the regular minutes under Arne Slot. So certainly not being forced out of the club. But one of the names that could be a potential exit, I would rank Darwin Nunez a lot higher. There's still interest from Saudi Arabia. But we know that the likes of Luis Diaz, Cody Gakpo, and others have all been favoured at times to Jota. But he has that versatility where he can play in more than one position. So Liverpool value him as a squad member, but ultimately the player may get other opportunities. And what I can tell you in terms of clubs that are closely looking at Jota is you have Newcastle United from the Premier League. We may hear some suggestions of a Wolves return. I'm told that Jota would not necessarily be interested in going back to Wolves. He wants to join a club with European football. So Newcastle from the Premier League. I can also tell you Milan, Napoli, and Leverkusen are 3 other clubs to watch. And Fiorentina have discussed Jota as well, but they're not sure either that the finances of the deal between them and Liverpool or the wage will make that particularly feasible for them. But they'll reassess it in the summer. So Jota exit is not guaranteed, but there's a realistic possibility that suitors make an approach to Liverpool to better understand the situation. And once again, Wolves may very well be interested in bringing him back, but Jota wants European and ideally some kind of Champions League football. Newcastle may be able to offer him that. You've got Bayern, you've got Napoli, and Milan's an interesting one. Their finances are tight. Doesn't look like they're going to permanently try and sign João Felix. They may not have any European football either. They're languishing in the middle of Serie A at the moment, but they also have Jota on their radar as well.
I like him. I think he's a really, really good player.
I'd keep him if I was Liverpool. That's
Same.
my personal opinion for what it's worth.
Same, no, honestly, I'm sure the American owners are listening to this right now as we speak, Ben. But yeah, I want to say thank you very much for tuning into the show. We will be catching you guys watching and listening in 2 weeks' time. As usual, we will talk about the biggest football transfer stories with top guests. You can watch us live on YouTube, X, and Facebook. Just search Gimme Sport, or you can listen back on your podcast app of your choice. Just search for Market Madness. For more info on any of the stories we've discussed and much more, head over to gimmesport.com. See you next time. Peace.